one thing that's a lot of fun, where the historical research comes into play, and all the records I've listened to as
Mm-hmm.
well, is something like the session the instructors at the New Orleans Trad Jazz Camp played uh, this year. There was a party for the students and the faculty on a brand new riverboat on the
Oh, how
Mississippi,
neat.
and the faculty played together, and there were some combinations within the faculty that had not played together as a group,
Mm-hmm.
but we picked some arrangements of songs from camps past and things that we generally knew. Um, some from New Orleans bands like the New Orleans Owls or the Halfway House Orchestra, and then the King Oliver, Jelly Roll Morton, Hot Five, and it sounded like a band.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't sound like seven people playing together. It sounded like a working band that plays all the time,
Yeah.
because everybody was processing those
Yeah.
historical
Right.
references, and there's nothing out of place.
Right.
Nobody was uh, playing behind the beat modern saxophone. Everybody was on the same page and pulling in the same direction. And I had all the freedom in the world to play things I'd learned from any drummer I've ever listened to
Yeah.
on records, and it all worked.
Yeah. I was actually surprised to learn that drums were not your first instrument.
No, not at all. Banjo was the first thing I played,
Mm-hmm.
but my fingers were too small to go around the fretboard. So my parents said, "Why don't you take piano lessons to stretch your fingers?" And I got bored,
Oh.
to my everlasting regret. That's the one instrument I wish I could play.
Yeah, me too.
Still my favorite. When I look past you on my office wall, there's a giant photo of Jelly Roll Morton, and
Oh,
that's, if I'd stayed with it, that's what
yeah.
I'd be doing now. Behind me is Don Yule on the wall. That I'd be happy
Behind
with
me is
that too.
Duke.
Yeah. Anyway, it's too late for that now. I
Yeah.
tried clarinet, and I liked playing it, but then I heard the Firehouse Five and the trombone. I said, "That's it.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm going to play." I also heard Kid Ory live.
Yeah. Oh, how neat.
So
Also at Disneyland?
between, yes,
Yeah.
and I heard Turk Murphy live. So I thought, okay, Ward Kimball, Kid Ory, Turk Murphy, that's what I want to play.
Uh-huh.
Got a trombone, making good progress on it, and went to the dentist for a checkup, and he said, "You need braces."
Oh,
I said, "Oh no, don't tell me that." Well, that was the end of the trombone.
yeah.
And my dad actually said, "Why don't you try drums?" And I thought, okay, I'll try drums.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I've tried a few other things in the interim, but I haven't applied myself enough to become proficient on any of them except drums.
Yeah.
Although I did play tuba for a while, and one of the nicest compliments I ever had, Turk Murphy told me that I didn't play it like a weapon.
Which is very easy to do. You don't know what you're doing.
It's been drummed. 1963 is when I started drumming.
Wow. How kind of a parent, though, is that to be able to suggest drums? So many parents hear that their child wants to do drums and go, oh,
Not only that, they pumped the player piano so I could play along with it.
how neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, my folks bought me headphones.
Perfect.
Don't make noise. Do whatever you want. Don't want to hear it. Well, that's also another reason why I'm sure you were able to do what you were able to do. You had extremely supportive parents that thought
Oh
outside
yeah.
the box.
Yeah. Drive me to San Francisco to Earthquake Lagoons, or to Disneyland for the annual Dixieland at Disneyland. And the South Frisco Jazz Band was playing every weekend in Huntington Beach. We
Uh-huh.
went up there a lot to hear that band. And that was actually my first exposure to the New Orleans style. Uh, One night, actually, to backtrack a little bit, I'd met Bob Raggio, the fantastic washboard player
Uh-huh.
who had played with the South Frisco Band. He worked at Ray Avery's Rare Records in
Uh-huh.
Pasadena,
I've heard of
and he helped me find out of print LPs.
that. Mhm.
And he sent me a postcard saying he'd found, it was a Turk Murphy or something, and said, by the way, there's a special edition of the South Frisco Band playing this coming weekend that you might like to hear. And it had Papa Ray Ronnie on cornet, who had taken lessons from Mutt Carey,
Yeah,
where he got the nickname Papa Ray.
yeah,
Played the real old style, the Freddie Keppard, Mutt Carey style, and Frank Dumond on trombone, whose idol was Big Jim Robinson, Mike Baird on clarinet, Dick Shushon on piano, who at that time was a Jelly Roll Morton style player, and that was still my favorite thing of all at that
right.
time was, yep, Morton, and Raggio and Vince Saunders, the leader, on banjo, and Mike Fay on string bass.
Oh, neat.
And I hadn't heard any bands with string bass, only tuba.
Yeah.
So we went up to hear the band, and wow, I like this string bass.
Hmm.
Why haven't I heard that before? But it was almost the El Dorado jazz band. The only difference was Vince Saunders instead of Dan Rudger on banjo. But that made a huge impression on me of what you can do with the New Orleans style. And in subsequent years, a lot of those guys would mentor me through the way to play New Orleans rhythm and the way the front lines work together and all that kind of thing. I learned a ton about New Orleans music from them.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear any other New Orleans bands until the New Orleans Rascals from Osaka
Yeah.
came through. They did a tour of California, and I got to hear them twice during that tour. And they were more focused on Bunk Johnson and George Lewis style. So that got me interested in Bunk and George Lewis, which I still love dearly. But the New Orleans style, it was about 4 years after I heard the San Francisco style before I listened seriously to any other kind of music.
Yeah. Well, if speaking of New Orleans style, I know you play a lot with Tim Laughlin. We mentioned that. And that I you have any recordings with Tim? Forgive me, because
Yes, lots of them.
great. I will make sure, just because there's been some copyright issues for any listeners, if I cannot insert specific tunes because of copyright issues, I will make sure to put links directly to a lot of these recordings or YouTube videos or other channels where Hal appears in giving either interviews or is playing, because there is fortunately a wealth of material. But if you just put in Hal Smith, Bridge the Wise, you may get the voice actor. So I will put specific links in the description, because I have spent a lot of time going, yeah, nope, nope, nope.
So have I.
I can imagine. It must suck to Google yourself.
I'm always asked, are you related? No.
Well, fortunately I didn't do that. Yay me. I didn't.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it too.
If I ever asked you that, I apologize, but I don't think I ever. And you also have been doing some recordings with Miss Jubilee and the Yaz Yaz Boys. Did I say it wrong?
Well, we haven't recorded.
You haven't recorded, but you've been doing a lot.
But I've been working with them in St. Louis and at the Bix Jazz Festival in Davenport.
Oh yeah, that's one festival I always want to go to. I never have yet. That and Elkhart. I've never been able to see that. I actually saw a video of Wild Bill with Milt Hinton and Saunders and Dave McKenna and Marty Gross at Elkhart, and I just thought, God, I would have, of course it was recorded before I was born, but I just would have loved to have been there. Just knowing Wild Bill playing outside anyway, I can just hear all of the comments.
I can too. Well, this was the 50th annual Bix Festival this year.
Oh, wow.
And the special guest was Bill Allred, who had
right.
played the very first one.
Because he was from there.
He was from there, and he sat in with several of the bands, including the one I put together for the weekend, and we had a ball with him playing.
Yeah, I know he was excited about going there. I think I talked to him the week before that festival, and he was so excited. I mean, Bill's not somebody that likes to sit still anyway, so COVID's been extremely difficult for Bill. But yeah, I'm sure that he must have just been so excited to be able to do that anniversary after having come from the hometown boy comes back.
When we were playing, I had we were playing a set of Jelly Roll Morton music. Actually,
Uh-huh.
that's all we played all weekend was compositions by Morton and things associated with other bands that
Uh-huh.
he made recordings or played. I got tongue tied there.
That's right.
Everything we played was one way or another either written by or associated with Morton. And Bill played as a guest on our last set. And I, one of the best things was he turned around while I was just playing time and said, I didn't hear the name, he said, but some older drummer from the Quad Cities area. He said, yeah, well, so and so didn't use a sock cymbal either.
And you're like, okay.
Oh, I just wasn't playing it. I had it set up. I just wasn't using. I didn't need it with that older style
Right.
that we were playing. But it's like he looked at me and said, "Oh, you don't use one at all." But I do. I just didn't happen to use it on that set.
Note to Bill.
That's the only thing I remember him saying the whole set. He played really well.
Oh yeah.
It went over very, very well.
Yeah, I know that we well, of course he had been playing with the Saunders Wild Bill group when I was really young, while Bill was alive, and then before they turned it into Midwest All Stars, then it was the Wild Bill Legacy or something group, and Bill was still in it. And then Roger started hiring Bill's band, who, mentioning Maddie Matlock earlier, did an awful lot of Maddie Matlock charts. I mean, just.
Oh yeah.
And Terry Myers being the only reed man in the whole group of brass, you just kind of, your mouth drops open because Terry's got chops of steel to be able to deal with that and make it sound so big when it's just him being the only reed player in there. But I know that you've with who knows what's going to happen with COVID in the future, but I know that you've been traveling as things are starting to open back up and do some things. And I want to make sure that folks know about that so that they can be able to go see you. Now, you mentioned you're also playing with in Austin and San Antonio, big bands?
No, it's a small swing band.
Oh, okay.
It's, with Floyd Domino, who is a Grammy Award winner.
Yeah.
For his work with Asleep at the Wheel.
Uh-huh.
But he's a very, very fine jazz pianist who likes Count Basie and Oscar Peterson and likes small band swing. So he's got some of the best swing musicians in Austin. And Emily Gimble is the vocalist. She's the relation to Johnny Gimble, who played fiddle with Bob Wills in the Texas Playboys for so many years. And in 2020, she was the Texas Musician of the Year.
Oh, how neat.
And she's a great singer. She basically sings Western swing and country, but she's also very fine swing, small band swing vocalist. So that's the group that I will be working with on September 19th. We're playing the Horseshoe Bay Casino in Horseshoe Bay, Texas. And I'll be playing a quartet gig with Floyd and Jamie Cummins on guitar and Ryan Gould on bass at the Austin Airport. They've got live music. There's 3 stages in the Austin airport with live music for the passengers going through the airport.
How neat. Soothe the savage beasts before they get on the plane and start punching airline attendants, I suppose. That's a good idea.
It's a very good idea. And sit down, hey, let's have a drink and mellow out in this nice band that's playing there.
Well, let's just chill and not hit anyone. Great.
Or let's not take the flight. Let's just stay here and listen to music. But I think
live in the airport.
It's a genius idea. I played it once before and it was just a blast. It was really fun.
I'm sure they really appreciate being able to have something to do besides sit there and, complain about the seats and complain about flights being delayed. I think that's a stroke of genius right there. Excellent.
I agree. And it's the live music capital of the world. So
yeah,
advantage of it.
Which is so weird because I think just especially in jazz, we're so attuned to thinking of places like New Orleans or even New York as music, but Austin is just huge for live music. And it's not a very far drive from where you are anyway.
Only because of road construction. The distance isn't that far, but it takes forever to get down there if
Oh,
there's lanes closed.
oh, sorry about that. That's not fun.
Yeah, me too.
Are you working, other than the jazz camp, are you working with Banu? I know that you had been working with her for quite a bit for a while, but of course COVID hit.
I had a gig scheduled with her at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival in October, but that whole thing was canceled.
Right. Yeah.
So at this point, the next thing I'll probably have with her is the French Quarter Festival next year in New Orleans, assuming that actually
Right.
does happen. And if things go according to plan, the Jazz and Heritage Festival would be later that month and the first weekend of the following month. So
Oh,
I could possibly have 2 engagements with her and the jazz camp. This is all assuming
right.
things go forward as they're supposed to go.
Yeah.
But
And weather
uh,
doesn't continue to be an issue during hurricane season.
and I would have had work with Tim Laughlin as well. So yeah, anything like that, I'm happy to drive down there to play with them. I mean, there's never a bad note, no no regrets. It's always a lot of fun and great music.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to have so many great musician friends in New Orleans, and
Yeah.
David Boatinghouse, Chris Tokarski, Steve Pistorius, Banu, Ben Polser, son of Ed,
Mm-hmm.
and Tim. Yeah, and
Yeah.
tons of great bass players. Tom Saunders is one. I the chances of getting on a stage with a bass player who's not very good is like slim and none in
Right.
New Orleans and Austin too. I
That's
just
good.
those are bass paradises for me. I love all those guys, and I always have a great time in the rhythm section, whoever I wind up with.
Yeah. Well, and Tom's group, one of
The
Tom's
Tomcat.
groups was here right after Hurricane Katrina in the Monterey Jazz Festival. And I was pretty blown away by, I mean, I knew they were good musicians. I'd already heard recordings and everything, but it's just, there's a whole kind of, and I know this is going to sound trite in a way, but so many musicians from New Orleans are so used to basically being right up here with people because they're playing small venues,
Right.
and they are just so joyful, and they create a sort of a party atmosphere in general. And I know it's a huge generalization, but I love the energy that a lot of the musicians from New Orleans, or that have spent a great deal of time there, because they are so engaged with the audience that they aren't playing at them. They're really kind of including them.
Yep.
Beside the fact that the audience isn't going to be participating with musical instruments, but they feel like they're participating. And that's the most important thing, I think, to be able to enjoy the music, is that they can feel like they're involved somehow or another.
Yep, I agree with that. That's one of the most difficult parts of the remote recordings.
Yeah, and I was going to
That we've
ask you
been
about that. I'm
doing
so glad you brought that up. How,
during the COVID.
yeah, because you've been doing quite a lot of that, and some of those I've
Wow.
listened to many times. I'm sure I've contributed a great many hours to a lot of those YouTube videos you sent me, because they are so, I mean, I of course I can't remember the name now because it's flown out of my head, but one of the links you had sent me, which I will put in the description, and again, I use the word tasty because it's just, it's like a little kitten. You just want to snuggle up with it. It's just such a great recording, but I can only imagine how difficult that must be for, I mean, you as a drummer, but just for each person in the band to work like that after you've spent your entire life with a completely different set of circumstances. How has that been a challenge for you, and how have you kind of prepared yourself and adjusted yourself with that?
Well, I've been lucky with all of the ones I've done. The ones that I've organized, the acapellas, where you actually see the people on the screen, piano always has to go first. So,
Yeah.
you know, I feel for Chris Tokarski or whoever has to lay down the track, because he can't interact with the other instruments.
Right.
You know, he'll have to guess how's the trumpet going to play this, or
Mhm.
how's the clarinet going to sound, and play something appropriate, and then play an inspirational solo
Mhm.
when the routine is marked piano solo.
Yeah,
So
he's so
I think
disconnected.
I've done, between Chris and Hugh Crozier in the United Kingdom, they're the two I've played with the most on those. And my hat's off to both of them for playing really interesting band piano and solo piano.
Hmm.
But and in both cases, they're really nice players, and they give me a lot of inspiration when I play.
Yeah.
Uh, Almost always it's been piano first, then drums, and then sometimes a lead horn, or maybe another rhythm instrument. It depends on who's organizing it and what they think will work best.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the remote recordings where there's no video. It's just the
Hmm.
recording itself. Um, the fact that those things sound as good as they do when they involve so many different cities,
Hmm.
and in the case of the one Sarah Spencer, the
Yeah,
sax player in
that's the
England,
one.
has organized. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's transatlantic, you
Yeah, I
know.
noticed
You've
because
got,
Clint was on trumpet.
yes, and
Yeah.
there's some with Dave Kosmina from Toledo on trumpet,
Oh,
and
okay.
3 or 4 British musicians, and other European countries,
Hmm.
and 9 times out of 10, everything holds together, and it sounds
Yeah,
like we're there, and we're not
and doing it
we're
all
not
at the
playing with
same time.
headphones on. Yeah.
Hmm. I know
When
the
somebody
first.
says, I'm sorry,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. What was that?
When somebody says, I heard your remote recording and it sounds like you were all in the same room, then
Yeah.
you know you did the right thing.
Yeah. No, you did, and it's exactly right. I knew the first time that I had seen anyone do that. I mean, other than like one of the late night comedians that can't remember the name right now, but with his band, they had done some things right after COVID hit where they had all the separate screens, the acapella thing. Was Tom Hook with Eddie Metz Jr.
Uh-huh.
And Metz had told me a little bit about how they had, or had mentioned somehow or another. Anyway, somebody told me about how it was recorded and what was done, and I thought, oh my God, how do you do that? Like, you're it's like being alone in a sound booth and just play, have fun, but make it right and make it sound a part of the group that you can't hear or see. Have a good
Yeah.
time. So I can only imagine what kind of challenges that must be. Hopefully COVID will be over soon, so you don't have to do that very much more.
Yeah. Well, however, in favor of doing that, it does let you record with people you wouldn't get to record with
Yeah,
otherwise,
right.
because everybody's spread out so far.
Yeah.
I've been working with a vocalist in Chicago, Gina DiGregorio, who's also a very fine drummer and vibes player. And
Hmm.
we're working on a project right now with Chris in New Orleans, and Brooks Prumo on guitar, and Ryan Gould on string bass in Austin, and
Hmm.
Andy Schaub and John Otto on horns in Chicago, and
Oh,
me.
neat.
But
Yeah.
everything I'm listening to so far, I haven't heard all the parts to everything, but it's really coming together very nicely, and it's going to be a swing style session. And
Nice.
trying to swing that way is not the easiest thing to do,
No,
but that
no.
one's working really well.
Oh, nice.
And the New Orleans style things that I've done, the last one with the jazzologist was very well received, and we're
Mhm.
finishing up another volume of that that'll be strictly a digital album.
Oh, good. I
And
was going to ask you about that one because I know that was one of you said that one was the Bunk Johnson based group, right?
Johnson, George Lewis, Jim Robinson, Don Ewell, Baby Dodds for
Hmm.
me, and
Hmm.
just the older style, the New
Right.
Orleans revival style, and that's something I've always loved, no matter what direction I may have gone, uh, what what kind of new music I've learned about, Chicago style, swing. I always loved New Orleans,
Yeah.
and especially Bunk, Kid
Hmm.
Ory, and that style.
Yeah. always, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours about all kinds of stories, and certainly we have done so over the years. Don't even get us started on our cats,
You got that right.
because that's another thing that we've talked hours and hours and hours about. But-
Anytime you want to talk about cats, that's fine with me.
Mm-hmm. No, you and I did do that at one point. I think it was in LA, because Saunders walked over and was staring at both of us and looking back and forth with us. We're talking about our cats, and he goes, "Why are you talking about cats?" And I went, "If you have to ask, go away."
Exactly right.
And I think you nearly choked, but Saunders did go away.
My black cat, as you know, is named after Alex Hill, the
Uh-huh.
composer, arranger. And when I'm in my office playing an Alex Hill record, he'll come in and flop down on his side as long as there's Alex Hill music playing. When it's done,
Oh, he knows his
walks
namesake.
out of the office. He understands. Yeah, very strange.
But thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. Hal, thanks so much for helping me out with this.
Thank
And
you.
As we get different YouTube links and other interviews, because you're just such a wealth of all kinds of knowledge and a good humored, kind, patient person, and just always a pleasure to talk to. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.